couple of years ago, I was talking to a buddy of mine, and I said, "Isn't it amazing how the world is turning into the world predicted in 1984?" And he said to me, "1984, it's a book, right?" So anyway, about 2, 3 months ago, I reread the book, and I thought I would share my thoughts with you. And I've got way too many slides, but I'm going to pump through them as
Speed
fast as
run
I
them.
can. And if you want me to stop on any slide, just yell out, and I will. Otherwise, it's rush, rush, rush. So yes, Mr. Troll.
Sorry. Uh, just have one real question because my battery's gonna run out. But
Yeah,
you think 360 slides would work on this?
I don't know. We could talk about that another time.
All right.
Okay, so 1984 revisited. 1984 is a dystopian social science fiction novel and cautionary tale, and we all know what those words mean.
Hopefully.
The author modeled the totalitarian government in the novel after Stalinist Russia and Nazi Germany. So a lot of the stuff that he's got in here are just extrapolations of what he was seeing going on in the world. He examines the role of truth, facts, language within politics and the ways in which they can be manipulated. The writer is George Orwell. He was a democratic socialist, and this was published in 1949. He wrote it, he finished writing it in 1948. So the title comes from actually the name 1984 is just 1948 with two numbers reversed. So he wasn't predicting a specific time in history. He wasn't saying, oh, this is going to happen in this many years. He was just saying, if we keep going the way they're going, we're going to get here someday. It centers on the consequences of totalitarianism, mass surveillance, repressive regimentation of people, behaviors within society. And there are certain characteristics that he put forth about his totalitarian state. Oceania is the name of it. It's a conglomeration of England, Scotland, Wales, the US, and parts of South America. That's Oceania. Um, and there are two other conglomerate nation states in the book as well, East Asia and Eurasia. Anyway, the characteristics include perpetual war. You have to be at war all the time. An omnipresent government surveillance going on all the time. Historical negationism and manipulation of reality. Manipulation of language and propaganda. And the
Right.
stratification of society. So what I'm going to do is go through each one of these bullets and talk a little bit about what happened in the book around that and what's happening today in various parts of the world. There are four ministries in the government of Oceania: the Ministry of Truth, Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Plenty, and the Ministry of Love. I'll talk about what they do. But first, let's talk about perpetual war. So, superstates, there are three of them. They're actually identical. They're all structured the same. They all do the same kind of things. But the public has to be kept ignorant of the fact, and they have to be given these other countries as boogeymen, right? We got our friends and we got our enemies. And we side with our friends and we fight our enemies. And the world economy is based on this continuing warfare. The alliances are bullshit. They shift all the time. In fact, there's a scene in the book where somebody's giving a speech about our friends in Eurasia, and in the middle of a speech, he's informed by an earbud or no, he's handed a piece of paper. Earbuds doesn't exist then. He's handed a piece of paper and it says, well, we're not at war with East Asia anymore. Now they're our friend and we're fighting Eurasia. And in the middle of a speech, he just changes the names and keeps on going. The balance of power is critical because nobody can ever rule the whole world. You got to keep this balance of we have a friend and we have a mutual hate for this other guy. And the war is handled by, of all people, the Ministry of Peace. And this reminds me of something that happened in American history. Back before World War II, we had something called the War Department, but now it's called the Defense Department. So we don't have a department for going to war anymore. We have a department for mutual defense now because we changed the name. And the name means a lot. The Ministry of Peace supports and engages in Oceania's perpetual war against the other two superstates. Pick one. And in the book, they say the primary aim of modern warfare is to use up the products of the machine without raising the general standard of living. But they don't really go into why, but we'll hit on why later on. This is a collection of wars that the U.S. has been in since 1900. The ones in orange are the ones that the U.S. fought by itself, and the ones in white are the ones that we fought in conjunction with other countries. And on the screen, you've got from 1899 to 1961. Here's 1961 to 2016, and here's from 2011 to 2019. So, does perpetual warfare exist? If you go through this list one by one, you'll see that most of the time, since 1900, the U.S. has been at war with somebody.
Overseas mainly,
These are
okay?
all the declared wars. The undeclared wars aren't in this list. Afghanistan, a 20-year-long war, is not in this list. Omnipresent government surveillance is the next characteristic of the world of 1984. Everyone in the outer party are basically
Peasants.
civil servants. They're under constant surveillance through telescreens. So you go into your apartment, there's a telescreen on the wall, you can't turn it off. It's got a camera, so they can see you, and it's got a microphone so they can hear you. And the microphones are so sensitive that if you're standing next to it, it can pick up your heartbeat. So forget about whispering to somebody and thinking you're not being heard. It ain't going to happen. And because of that, everybody is very, very, very careful about what they say and what they do, because we're watching you. Big Brother is watching you. And although it's never stated specifically, it's the law of the ant colony. Everything that isn't mandatory is forbidden. There's a scene in the book where Winston Smith, he's a character in the outer party. He's talking to somebody in the inner party, they're the elite, and he says, someday we're going to meet in the place where there is no darkness. Place where there is no darkness is a euphemism here for a couple of different things, but one of those things is, a place where we're not under surveillance constantly. Instead of the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, they have the spies. Little kids are taught to spy on everybody, each other, their own parents. And there's a scene in the book where one of the kids brags about the fact that he turned in his own parents being subversive because he thinks they were being subversive. There's another group that's maybe imaginary and maybe real, but probably it's made up, called the Brotherhood. And these are the subversive elements fighting to bring down the government. But probably don't even really exist. It's just another boogeyman for everybody to hate. And there are two concepts here. Thought crime, that's thinking things you shouldn't think. And the thought police, they're the people that will come and get you if they find out you've been thinking things you shouldn't think. I'll give you some examples in a bit of what thought crime is. But one of the things that Winston says, I think it's Winston, in the book, he says thought crime does not entail death. Thought crime is death. If they catch you thinking things you shouldn't think, then you're pretty much doomed. So Winston Smith has a diary, and he got this diary, he bought it in an antique shop in the Prole neighborhood. The Proles are the proletariat. They're the people that don't work for the government. So if you're a plumber, a baker, you're a Prole. And so he was in this Prole neighborhood, and he went into an antique shop, and he bought a blank book, and he starts writing his thoughts down in this book. And writing your thoughts down, it's thought crime. You can't do that. It's not mandatory. It's forbidden. And one of the first things he writes is, I'm already dead. And eventually he gets a girlfriend, Julia. And one of the first things they say to each other is, we are the dead, because they know committing thought crime and the thought police will eventually get them. Now, the way he writes in his book is he has a little spot in his room where there's a little bit of an alcove where he's not subject to the camera. So he thinks he can write and nobody will know he's writing his thoughts. But in fact, Mr. Charrington, who sold him the book, is one of the thought police, and this is a trap. Now, do the thought police exist today? Well, this is a couple of scenes from Russia. These people were protesting the Ukraine war, but they can't protest the Ukraine war because that is a crime in Russia. So instead of writing, stop the war, they just held up blank signs and they got arrested anyway because they were committing thought crime. And the Russian thought police arrested them.
Just the real police.
And I heard somebody talking about this before. China has spent billions to purchase the latest technology in facial recognition, artificial intelligence, and other digital technologies. And analysts predicted several years ago China would have as many as 300 million cameras installed by this year. Databases examined by the Chinese newspaper, The People's Daily, found that surveillance tools can simply be used to find the identities of people walking on the street using facial recognition and finding out who they're meeting and whether they're a member of the party or not. So constant surveillance, it's happening in China. There is one public camera for every 4.1 Chinese citizen. China's installed base is expected to jump by next year to 567 million cameras. So there'll be one camera for every 3 Chinese citizens at that point. China has a social credit system associated with all of these cameras and all of this surveillance. The ruling party dishes out penalties and rewards based on a system created with the intention of incentivizing good behavior. And who defines good behavior? The people doing the monitoring. So Chinese citizens are given various penalties for a range of offenses, including not paying your taxes, of course, jaywalking, walking a dog without a leash, or how long you play a video game, among other things. This all affects your social credit. Now, in the U.S. and in the West in general now, we have something called a hate crime, also known as a bias crime. And these are recognized as a distinct category of crimes that have a broader effect than most other kinds of crimes because the victims are not only the crime's immediate target, but are representative of others like them. Okay? And a hate crime has a bigger penalty than the crime without the hate. So if you beat somebody up because you don't like them, that might be a misdemeanor and, you get a month in jail. But if you beat them up because they're a specific religion or race or gender or whatever, that's a hate crime and the penalty goes way up. The FBI defines hate crimes as criminal offenses against a person or property motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against something. This could be considered maybe thought crime because they're saying, what was he thinking, right? And if they can prove that you were thinking in a biased manner, then it's a hate crime, right? So they're reading your mind, and that kind of implies that the enforcement of this is the thought police. But it's getting more and more common. Many organizations are turning to tracking technology to measure productivity. So you might work for a company where they're tracking your behavior, especially with more employees working from home, they're doing it remotely. There are some chaplains who are held to a point system based on how many times they check in with patients. So they're being tracked for that. There are medical workers who are being tracked to see if they're washing their hands often enough. Emails are being tracked, phone calls are being tracked, keystrokes are being tracked, numbers of badge-ins to the office are being tracked. Facial recognition and audio and video recordings are becoming commonplace in many workplaces and out in society. Employers argue they need the tracking systems to monitor productivity, but also to ensure compliance to policies or protection of sensitive data. They also use the data to make business decisions or improve processes, so you can justify a lot of this stuff. Global demand for employee monitoring software is up 78% as of 2022, which is the largest increase in years, and the demand has been steadily increasing over the last few years. Research by Gartner found that in the next 3 years, 70% of large firms will be using tracking software. Another report estimated 8 out of 10 of the largest privately held companies use it right now. Cell phones can be tracked by number by anyone. You can get an app that will allow you to track somebody else if you know their cell phone number. Many smartphone apps have your permission to turn on your microphone. When you download an app and it asks for all that permission, I have to use your microphone, I have to use your camera, I have to use your social, your mailing list, blah, 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 and you say yes. And you agree to it, thinking, well, that'll only happen when I'm using the app. But in reality, they can turn on your microphone anytime, and an AI could be listening to your conversation, looking for keywords and key phrases, and using that to feed you advertisements. So if you're talking to somebody about, I got to buy a stroller because I just had a baby, suddenly you see advertisements appear about strollers and you say, how did they know? That's how they know. Large cities have cameras in place for use by law enforcement. We know that's true in China, sure. It's also true in London. They're all over the place. And it's true in New York City. They're all over the place. Next is historical negationism. And what that is negating historical fact. The party in Oceania controls everything, even the people's history. Face of the party is Big Brother. He's modeled after Stalin. The guy on the right there, that's Stalin. The guy on the left is Big Brother. Big Brother is watching you. And he's described in the book as an invincibly fearless protector standing like a rock against the hordes of Asia. He's a black-haired, black-mustachioed, full of power and mysterious, calm figure. So when you see a political figure putting himself in that role of being an invincibly fearless protector, yada, 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 he's setting himself as a big brother, as a dictator. He enjoys an intense cult of personality. You've heard that phrase lately in politics, manufactured by the party's excessive brainwashing techniques. And this poster here, this is a poster that's all over Oceania. INGSOC stands for English Socialism, which is the economic system supposedly at work. Big Brother is watching you, a constant reminder that you're under surveillance. And then there's some double speak at the bottom, or double think, excuse me. War is peace, slavery is freedom, ignorance is strength. And enabled to believe these things, you have to be able to hold two contradictory thoughts in your head at the same time. This is called doublethink. The Ministry of Truth, one of the 4 parts of the government, controls all the information. They control the news, entertainment, education, the arts, everything. I didn't go into it in this presentation, but in the United States today, the news is completely owned by a handful of organizations. I talked about that in my last presentation here. The entertainment industry, again, a handful of organizations and companies. The education system, my son works in the education industry, and most of the textbooks in the United States have a content that's dictated by Texas, because they're the biggest buyer of textbooks. They get to control the content. And also the Ministry of Truth controls the arts. The Ministry of Truth also practices historical revisionism, which robs everybody of the past, robbed of the ability to learn from history, because history is constantly being rewritten in real time. In the worries of the future, trolls exist in a state of constant present and are incapable of revolution, right? Nothing is real, because if you believe it to have happened today, tomorrow, the Ministry of Truth is going to prove, well, it didn't really happen. You just imagine it. And that's called gaslighting. And we see some of that going on these days. Winston Smith, the hero of our book, is a member of the Outer Party. He works at the Ministry of Truth, and he rewrites historical records to conform to the state's current, changing version of history. And he refers to this as the mutability of the past. The past is not a fixed thing. It's changing constantly, and he's changing it. And the way he does it is he goes into past editions of the Times, which is their paper of record, and he rectifies historical records to accord with Big Brother's current pronouncements. So everything the party says appears to be true. And the original documents are destroyed. So you can never go back and prove anything. Here's an example, and this is true. This is a real picture from Stalinist Russia, and there's Stalin standing next to somebody who fell out of favor with Stalin. So Stalin went back and just erased him from existence. He became an unperson. Here's another example. There's Lenin sitting at the table there, surrounded by some of his guys, and suddenly one of them disappears. Why? He fell out of favor. He became an unperson. So for Winston, the past was dead. For everybody in 1984, the past was dead, and the future was unimaginable. The impossibility of knowing what the world was like before the revolution was impossible. You couldn't know what the world used to be like because you only had current documentation, which was constantly changing. I'll tell you. And the slogan, and I think this was O'Brien who says this, or it might be from the book. I'll refer to that later. But O'Brien is an inner party member. He says, who controls the past controls the future, and who controls the present controls the past. He would just rewrite history. Of course, that's happening right now, right? Here's a guy who repeats a lie until 60% of his party believes it to be the truth. He has rewritten history, and that's the mutability of the past. And I know this is hard to see, but what it's showing you is that where somebody gets their news from, hang on a second, I've got a, oh, there it is. I got to get myself a pointer. Sorry, I always forget. Items, and here's my laser pointer. And a lot of you aren't going to be able to see my laser pointer, but what's going on here is this is a chart showing responsibility for January 6th, right? And the gray dots are all Americans, red, this dark red, this is Republicans who trust far-right news sources, there's Republicans who trust Fox News, there's Republicans in general, Republicans who most trust broadcast network news, there's independents, and here's Democrats. And you can see, if you say, do white supremacist groups, are they responsible for January 6th? If you get your news from the far-right news sources, you say, yeah, no, it's not white supremacist groups. But if you're a Democrat or an independent, you tend to say, or you get your news from broadcast news, you tend to say, well, yeah, it's white supremacist groups that were there on January 6th. If you ask them, was Donald Trump responsible? Again, the news source directly correlates with whether you believe Donald Trump was responsible or not. Conservative media platforms are responsible. Where do you get your news? Direct correlation. Republican leaders, direct correlation. Here's an inverse correlation. If you think it was Antifa doing a false flag operation, it's the opposite, right? And if you think it's white conservative Christian groups, again, direct correlation. So I'm not saying it's where you get your news is the cause or the effect, but there is a direct correlation. Another strange thing that we see happening is in 2020, there were only about 350 book ban challenges in the US. As of 2022, there were over 1,600. It was very localized. Depending on the government of your state, they were either liberal in terms of books, or they were really big time in favor of book banning. Here's Texas, 801 challenges, books in the library. Here's the list of books they want to ban in Florida. And I mean, some of them are pretty good books. Here's The Handmaid's Tale. They want to ban that. What's another one? Kite Runner. They want to ban that. Brave New World, that's been around forever. They want to ban it. Toni Morrison, they want to ban her.
That's crazy.
Now, a lot of these books that they want to ban, most of them, in fact, now, are sexual orientation books. And, the Republican Party, the right wing, is really big on uh, denial of anything but straight heterosexual males and females. Another thing that we see happening in 1984 is the manipulation of language and reality. And I mentioned newspeak and doublethink. There's also doublespeak, which was not in 1984, but doublespeak is happening all over the place. And the party controls everything, even the people's language. They're creating a new dictionary, the Newspeak Dictionary. In order to prevent unorthodoxy, all you have to do is create a language that doesn't enable you to talk in an unorthodox manner. Newspeak reduces thought to simple opposites, such as good and ungood. And there's no gray, it's black and white. Either good or it's ungood. An intentional dichotomy that hides nuance, ambiguity while promoting black and white thinking. The guy who's writing the dictionary in 1984, it says to Winston over lunch one day, in the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. He's really proud of the great job he's doing. He says this is the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every year. I'm going to skip this. But here's an example. You've got good, and if something is better than that, then it's plus good, okay? And if it's really, really good, then it's double plus good, and really, really double. And also, you've got ungood, double plus ungood. Crime think is thinking things you shouldn't be thinking, right? You're guilty of a thought crime. But if you never have a thought crime, then you're a good, thinkful person. Belly feel is, I guess, listening to your gut. I'm not real sure about that. Double think is the ability to think two different things that are diametrically opposed and believe both of them. And we do that all the time. Humans are really good at doing that. In fact, in Alice in Wonderland, somebody says, I think at least 10 impossible things every morning before breakfast.
I think that was.
Face crime. That's an interesting thought. Face crime is somebody says something to you and it shows on your face how you feel about it. So that's a thought crime that appears on your face. You've committed face crime. They can arrest you for that. There's the Ministry of Love. There's Old Speak. That's what I'm speaking. There's Old Think. That's what I'm thinking. Mal-quoted. Reality control. You catch yourself before you're about to have a thought crime and you stop it. So you've committed, you've actuated reality control, right? Because you don't want to commit a thought crime. INGSOC, that's the English socialism. The Think Police, that's Think Paul. Sub is submitting something upstairs. An unperson, you know what that is. Ministry of Truth, Ministry of Peace. And then Duck Speak, and I love this one, Duck Speak. This is politicians who, you know what they're going to say. They give you word salad. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. It's blah, 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 and you're not listening anyway. And this is an old Gary Larson cartoon, which I love. Okay, Ginger, I've had it. You stay out of the garbage. Understand, Ginger? Stay out of the garbage or else. And what Ginger hears is blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger, blah, 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 blah. It's duck speak. Oh, do we do that? Yeah. And this is double speak more than anything else. What's a bailout? That's saving a company by giving it corporate welfare. You don't say corporate welfare, that sounds bad. You say it's a bailout, that sounds good, right? Now, depending on which side of the fence you're on, you're going to use one word or the other to make it sound good or sound bad, all up to your politics. Socialism, if you're a socialist, socialism is good. Social Democrat, good if you're a socialist or even a social democrat. But if you're on the opposite spectrum, opposite end of the spectrum, socialism is a bad word. And people will call you a socialist, meaning you're an evil person. You're a bad person. You're anti-capitalist. Entitlements, social welfare, good or bad. Alternate facts. That's a great one, right? Well, you have your facts and I have my alternate facts, and mine are as good as yours. Crooked media. The media is the enemy of the people if they don't agree with what you're saying, right? But in the Constitution, media is as big as any of the three branches of government. So how can you believe in the Constitution and defend the Constitution and then call the media the enemy of the people? It's doublethink. And it goes on and on. Alt-right, false flag, enhanced interrogation, right? That's not torture, it's enhanced interrogation. It's a good thing. Redistribution of wealth, a death tax, all of this stuff. These are just ways of framing things as either good or bad, depending on how you want them to be held. I'm going to skip this. All this doublethink stuff is necessary. Even to use the word doublethink, it's necessary to exercise doublethink, because it's believing that you can think two things that are the antithesis of each other and truly believe them. Scott Fitzgerald said in 1936, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time, still retain the ability to function. But again, we all do it. We all do it all the time. In the book, whatever the party holds to be truth is truth in 1984. Now, in today's America, there is a group of people called QAnon. Whatever QAnon says is true. If you're a member of QAnon, it is true, no matter how far-fetched it sounds. And some of the stuff they spout is so far-fetched, it's hard to believe anybody would swallow it, and yet, there's a whole bunch of them that do. The party is not interested in the overt act, says O'Brien at one point. Thought is all we care about. We do not merely destroy our enemies, we change them, and the context there is we change the way they think. Here's an example of us doing this now. George W. Bush in the U.S. Congress said that in 2001, the men who flew their planes into the World Trade Center were cowards. And they said it over and over again. They're cowards. They're bad people, cowards. If they were brave people, I don't know what they would have done. They wouldn't have flown their plane into the World Trade Center. But 6 days after that happened, Bill Maher went on TV. He had a show called Politically Incorrect, and he challenged that business of they're cowards. He said, we've been the cowards, lobbing cruise missiles from 2,000 miles away. That's cowardly. Staying in the airplane when it hits the building, do what you want about it, not cowardly. And he lost his show because of that. He was thrown off the air immediately because he disagreed with something that was on its face false. And we do a lot of that. We have a death penalty in some states. We don't have it so much anymore. And pretty much in the world, this has gone away. But for a long time in the U.S., if you killed somebody, that's against the law. You kill somebody, you're a bad person. You kill somebody, you're innately evil. We're going to kill you. Recently, the Supreme Court decided corporations are people. Totally bogus. Total nonsense. And yet, it's a legal premise now. Corporations are people. In religion, this has been going on for a long time. If something bad happens, you say, well, or my sister would say, well, that's God's plan. You know, why did that kid walk off oh, it was God's plan. And, well, why would God want a kid to do that? Well, God works in mysterious ways. It's miracles to perform. We're incapable of understanding God's plan. Okay. But I noticed you were praying for your football team to win the game. So God has a plan that the Rams are going to win, but you want a different team to win, so you're praying so God will change his mind. But the Rams fans are all playing for the Rams to win. So if the Rams win, it's because God was listening to them and not to you? Or was it God's plan that the Rams win and you're
Which
praying
God?
has no effect, or I don't get it. And the other thing, is God is good. God gives infants cerebral palsy and cancer and stuff like that, and God is good. I don't get it. If I was God, I wouldn't do that. Does that mean I'm a better person than God is? Okay, propaganda. Ministry of Plenty rations and controls food, goods, and domestic production in the book 1984. And every fiscal quarter, it claims to have raised the standard of living, even during times when it has in fact reduced rations availability and production. All they have to do, though, is go to the Ministry of Truth and have them change history. So, if in 1983 they said production is going to increase by 2% and it only increases by 1%, just go to the Ministry of Truth and have them change history so that they really said it would increase by 1%, and hey, we were right. So, they're always right. In fact, Hitler said, if you make the lie big enough, and you make it simple, and you keep saying it, eventually they believe it. And we've seen that play out recently too. Um, Another thing that they do, part of their propaganda campaign, is they have in 1984 designated hate. They have two events. There's the 2 minutes of hate. You do that on a weekly basis, say Friday at 2 o'clock, right? You go to an auditorium, everybody's in the auditorium, and you do 2 minutes of hate. And once a year, you do Hate Week. So who do you hate? Well, if we happen to be at war with Eurasia right now, we hate the Eurasians. So there's a parade. Some Eurasians are on a float, and you get to throw tomatoes at them and scream at them and hate them, and you get it out of your system. And the once a week thing, you go into a room and you get in with a mob mentality and you hate this guy, Emmanuel Goldstein. He's the enemy of the people. He used to be an inner party member, but now he leads a brotherhood, a subversive organization that wants to bring down the party. And he's the author of the book titled The Theory and Practice of Oligarchical Collectivism. Great title. But the book is made up by the party. And Emmanuel Goldstein, well, maybe he existed. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he was in the party. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe there's a brotherhood. Maybe there isn't. You don't know. How could you possibly know? And the truth is flexible and liquid. Of course, we do this too, only we do it with television and with Twitter and with social media. We pick somebody we hate, somebody you hate, Mitch McConnell, and when it's on TV, you get disgusted. Say, you son of a bitch, get off my TV. I can't watch this. I'm going to change the channel. I can't stand it. Or if you're on the other side of the spectrum, it's somebody else. It's Hillary Clinton, lock her up. I'm going to skip this part. Stratification of society, that's another big thing in the book. There's the inner party. They're the top 1% of 1%, Bernie Sanders' friends. They wear a uniform, black coveralls. They can turn off their view screens. You get the best food, you get the best of everything. Then there's the outer party. Winston Smith is in the outer party. He wears blue overalls. He can't turn off his view screen. And then there are the proles. If you're a plumber, you're a baker, you're a butcher, you're a prole. The proletariat. And they have a saying, only the proles and animals are free because they're not subjected to the constant surveillance like everybody else. Skip that one. The Ministry of Love. The Ministry of Love is where they torture people. So, but they can't call it the Ministry of Hate. That would be a bad thing. So we call it the Ministry of Love. This is doublespeak, something we're familiar with. If Julia says at one point, if they could make me stop loving you, that would be the real betrayal. And in the book, Winston and Julia go to room 101. They're tortured till they no longer love each other. They're willing to throw each other under the bus. Do it to her, says Winston. Don't do it to me. And he falls out of love, and they did it. The ultimate betrayal. So where does this stuff happen in the world? Well, in the US, we got Donald Trump. He's trying to become Big Brother. He's trying really hard. Might make it. In Italy, there's Giorgia Meloni. She wants to be Big Brother in Italy. In Brazil, we had Jair Bolsonaro. He just lost an election. That's a win for our side, folks. In India, there's Narendra Modi. In the Philippines, Rodrigo Duterte. In Hungary, Viktor Orban, and it goes on and on. Here's a great example. This is Iran. In Iran, there's a guy, Ali Khamenei. He's the supreme leader of Iran, also referred to as supreme leader of the Islamic Revolution, but officially he's called the Supreme Leadership Authority. Keywords here, though, are supreme leader. He's the head of state and the highest political and religious authority of the Islamic Republic of Iran. One guy. The armed forces, the judiciary, state television, and other key government organizations such as the Guardian Council and the Expediency Discernment Council are subject to the Supreme Leader. The Supreme Leader delineates the general policies of the Islamic Republic. Current lifetime office holder is Ali Khamenei, that's easy for me to say, as he's issued decrees and made the final decisions on the economy, the environment, foreign policy, education, national planning, and all the other aspects of the governance in Iran. Khamenei also makes the final decisions on the amount of transparency in elections, and he's dismissed and reinstated presidential cabinet appointees, even though he's not the president. Supreme Leader directly chooses the ministers of defense, interior, intelligence, and foreign affairs, as well as certain other ministers such as education, culture, and science. Iran's regional policy is directly controlled by the Office of the Supreme Leader, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs just doing protocol and ceremonial stuff. All of Iran's ambassadors to Arab countries are chosen by Quds Force, which directly reports to the Supreme Leader. The office was established by the Constitution of Iran in 1979, pursuant to the concept of the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. As the guardian jurist, the Supreme Leader guides the country, protecting it from heresy and imperialist predations, ensuring the laws of Islam are followed. According to the Constitution, the powers of government in the Islamic Republic of Iran are vested in the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive powers, all functioning under the supervision of a Supreme Leader.
What a surprise.
The Supreme Leader ranks above the President of Iran and personally appoints heads of the military, the government, and the judiciary. In theory, the Supreme Leader is elected by the Assembly of Experts. However, all candidates for membership in the Assembly of Experts, including the President and the Majlis, Parliament, must have their candidacy approved by the Guardian Council. Members are all appointed unilaterally by the Supreme Leader, half subject to confirmation by the Majlis after being appointed by the head of the Iranian judiciary, who is appointed by the Supreme Leader. So, there have been cases where incumbent Ali Khamenei publicly criticized members of the assembly, resulting in their arrest, subsequent removal. There have been cases where the Guardian Council repealed its ban on particular people after being directed to by Khamenei. The Supreme Leader is legally considered inviolable, with Iranians being routinely punished for questioning or insulting him. Wow, this guy's really, really powerful. But it gets worse. Iran has a national hijab and chastity day, which is observed annually on July 12th to promote veiling. In September of this year, 22-year-old Mahsa Amini was arrested by the morality police because her hijab was not up to specification. The morality police. She was taken to a re-education center. She was loaded into a van, and when she arrived at the re-education center, she had been beaten brutally and died within a few days of arrival. That was her picture there. I don't know if you saw that. Oh, go back. That's her picture. Young girl, and you can see hair from under her hijab, and that's why she was beaten to death. So, Women in Iran have risen up against the regime. They went almost immediately onto the streets. You can see in this picture, they're showing their hair. And they're fighting back. And this has been going on ever since. And they're burning their hijabs. They're cutting off their hair. There are solidarity protests worldwide. And sadly, more than 150 now demonstrators in Iran have been killed. The police fire directly, real bullets into the crowd and kill these people for protesting. So, they're fighting the good fight. I don't see how they can possibly win. They're trying. So, can this happen in the Western world? Can this happen in the U.S.? Well, let's see.
The reason we had so many overreaching regulations in our nation is because the church complied. The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Well, she's a congressperson, and she doesn't believe that there's a separation of church and state in the U.S. She represents a state or part of a state. So here's the question. Pick a country and ask, is it 1984 in that country? Well, is there a big brother? Is there perpetual war being fought by that country? Are the people there under constant surveillance? Are the people being suppressed and controlled? Is there a stratification of society? And in how many countries are these things happening? And why? Well, according to 1984, the party seeks power entirely for its own sake. We're not interested in the good of others. We're interested solely in power, or luxury, or life, or happiness. Only power, pure power. We know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. Power is not a means, it is an end. So this business of the presidency in the U.S. being passed on peacefully from one president to the next is antithetical to this idea. According to Orwell, if you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. Pretty bleak.
Yep.
That's my talk. I'm sorry I took so long. I rushed as fast as I could. Anybody have any comments or thoughts or ideas they want to express? Hopes, fears? Can you relate? Think it's happening? Is it happening where you live?
Yes,
Nobody
everywhere.
has anything to say. Please, somebody say something. There's
No,
somebody.
I do have something
Vicky.
to say.
Oh, wait, Vicky had her hand up. What's up, Vicky?
No, I get what you're saying completely, and that is, when I think about stuff like that, it makes my anxiety go up because I'm trying to figure out I don't know what's going to happen after this election. I know what I've seen. I know what I've seen people trying to do, and it makes me mad because I'm not thinking about left or right, Republican, Democrat. I'm thinking about me and who's going to take care of me and how am I going to survive all of this stuff.
Yeah,
But
what would your life be like if they decide, for example, that they can control whether you can have an abortion or not?
Exactly. Like I
Yeah.
am literally, I'm caught up in a wave that I have very limited control over. I have some control, but very, very limited control. And it's sad because when I think back to where some of this started, like when they were talking about like the whole Civil War, and they lost. They sold a lot, and they sold it all of this time. People have come. It's become so ingrained in people. I mean, on both sides, it's become so ingrained in people that challenge that. How do you ask me? I find myself asking, how do you get this amount of people to make a paradigm shift, to think a little bit differently, especially people who either don't understand or people who like things the way they are because you think that's just the way it is. How do you do that?
Well, we're going to find out on Friday, roundabout Friday, whether it's
Yeah.
possible or not. Yeah. Anybody else? Somebody else had something to say. You can catch it. Oregon guy, have something?
Just a couple things. Number one, I'm delighted to see how popular you are with damn good reason. Excellent presentation.
Thank
About
you.
8 slides back, the words half were replaced instead of and. You may want to check your slide. I thought it was an excellent presentation, and because you're so
Other
popular,
than
we
misspellings, right?
moved the unbeliever's point of view back an hour just so we wouldn't interfere with your presentation. So thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you for showing up. Thanks for coming. Uncle Paul, something?
Yeah. Yes. Ron, I've always wanted to say something in this particular event, but I've never. Usually, I have bad networks on Sunday evening.
Yeah.
My name is Paul. I'm calling in from Nairobi, Kenya. I see some of my friends here. I want to mention 3 things. One is that I want you all to go and Google when you take off your headset and Google Libya for the United States intervention. How beautiful that country was, how stable that country was. In fact, it was the best performing countries in Africa. Gaddafi, the president then, whom was trashed as a terrorist by the American government, was actually giving money to the jobless youth. The old people, got their pension. Libya was beautiful. Right now, it's a ghost town. It's a ruin of its former glory, thanks to the United States government. Secondly, I want to talk about the colonial British government and their monarchy. The BBC has never, not even once, shown a documentary of the millions dead and killed by the British government. Till today, I don't know where they buried my grandfather. That's why I say his name on my name. If you click on me, my name is Uncle Paul Wayaki. Wayaki is his name. We don't know where they buried him as he fought for the independence of this country. That, and the final thing I'll say is that in the last general election in Kenya, this past August, slogan of the current president who was running for government was "Freedom is coming," because he was the only guy who was not tied to the colonial government. Colonial government never left Africa. What they left was a systematic, way of ruling behind the scenes of the government. And here is one example I would like to tell you about. The British Army. Everything I'm telling you, please go find it out. Don't believe me. I hate it when people believe something. Whatever Ron was talking about, I'll go Google it because I want to see whether, I'm gonna go do my own research. Believe it or not, the British Army has 1,000 acres in Kenya. No one else can go in there. It's called Batuk, British Army Training at Kenya. Now, the worst thing about it is that one soldier or a few soldiers have at one time, socialized with women in that neighborhood and killed them. And nothing was done. They know who killed them. They know which officer killed the girls. Nothing is done. And so I keep asking the Kenyan government, enough of this BS. Can you imagine if the Kenyan army had 1,000 acres somewhere in England and they killed a British woman? You would see it on the headline, the CNN. So as you talk about media, realize that our media also works for this government because they put all of the trash that they do under the cover. COVID vaccine, we'll talk about that later. Most of our women in Africa are now able to give birth Their children are dying in their wombs. Come on, people. Better than
Well, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything they want to talk about?
Well, since I'm from Russia, maybe I
No?
should speak of the viewpoint from this point, because we do have something similar to what was described in 1984. But it's very interesting how this book is also coupled with the Brave New World, which is surprised. I was surprised when I learned that in Florida they're trying to ban that one, because it's an opposite situation. I love that book even more maybe than this one, but certainly what I see right now in Russia is similar to what's like. We see that in America as well, because like the propaganda and this newspeak and the use of words and misuse of words is happening all over the world, and surveillance I think is it's everywhere, and I think the reality is changing, and in many countries. So I don't know why that happens. Maybe because there's like a lust of power that people have, and they want to stay in power and they want control, and they can do that because a lot of people. Well, speaking of Russian, I think situation that a lot of people support that, because when they use their propaganda, they actually always pose the us and them, right? And they try to always show this, boogeyman, as you said, like as a negative picture of something, which is not entirely untrue if you think about it, because the NATO has promised to never, expand beyond certain point, which it violated, and actually like continued to have more and more bases on the territory of Ukraine. So that would be, preposterous to expect that Russia is not going to react to that, because it's a direct threat to the So I don't judge, and I don't try to justify any of the sides, but America certainly has done a long history of wars in different countries. It's just a smartest strategy, to cover up things by good propaganda, by good marketing, like including media, I think, because so many countries watch the movies and films and TV shows that are produced in the Hollywood that pose the truth about the which is not always true, because if you take different facts from World War II, which is a still, never healing wound on the body of, collective history and trauma of Russia, because there are so many, like you can just Google or maybe take YouTube and find the numbers, the statistics of deaths, and casualties in war. And Soviet Union actually has suffered such a huge number of deaths fighting the Nazi regime, but it has been forgotten. There was an interesting statistics where different people from different countries were asked about the picture of the World War II, and only Russia remembers about many facts that were truth, and like many other countries, they just wanted to see only their own picture of truth. And which is preposterous when America tries to, have these movies about how they came to Europe and, freed everybody. Come on. America has been given a lot of credit, loans and debts to both sides. And so, America has made a lot of money on that war, and arrived to the place of, devastation only at the end. So there's so many propaganda, filtration, and so many, untruths that are used, and this is just ridiculous how different politicians use, clearly they use the templates of the Nazi propagandists in their fight, where they say we're fighting against the Nazis. The propaganda inside Russia, for example, they try to show people that there are some nationalists in Ukraine. That's why we have to clear up that plague and all that, and it's just ridiculous how people do not see that. So I believe in education. I do enjoy this group. I enjoy your talks a lot. And I think that we can eventually, as people, because I do believe that the majority of people should be educated and question the fact that we do have some leaders. Why do we have leaders? It's because we still have that, like dependent thinking, I would say, or like a survival mindset where we need somebody to lead us, to tell us what to do instead of thinking for ourselves. So I think that's the barrier that we should, overcome, because it's difficult. Yeah.
It's an evolutionary artifact, this propensity to follow leaders, and because of that, so much of our behavior is due to evolutionary artifacts.
True.
The fact that we can do double think is an evolutionary artifact. The fact that we can be misled, will believe a repeated lie, it's an evolutionary artifact. To overcome our own evolution and be truly rational, it's hard to do. It's
Exactly.
really hard to do.
As I say, it's very calorie consuming.
Humans, we have to try, right?
Yeah. Well, I think if we have hope, that's the only hope for me. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thoughts, feelings, fears, dreams, jokes?
Please, jokes.
Bonsoir.
I'm just waiting for.
Well, I was just going to. I find it ironic that the alt-right in the United States is gotten to the point where their grandfathers fought the Nazis, and they've actually embraced a lot of Nazi philosophy.
Yeah.
In this country, this is little by little. Technology has not helped as far as all this goes.
Making it worse.
You have social media, and you can just communicate with people who believe like you believe. I don't know if there's going to be a way out for us. I mean, unless I don't know. I don't have the answers. It's just something I've noticed lately. I mean, I know we have less freedom now in this country than we did when I was younger. I mean, they make new laws all the time, but they very seldom ever repeal any. So,
there's no percentage in
that. We're just heading in the wrong direction overall.
Altogether.
I could be optimistic about it, but I'm not. It's kind of it's difficult sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard. Paige, did you have something? No.
No,
Okay.
I didn't. Thank you. Raise my hand.
Anybody? It's all right.
I heard Midnighter say something, but he was too far away.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Oh, was that me? Okay.
There you are.
I was going to say, and I appreciate this comment. I mean, I'm very frustrated. I too sense that there's no easy way out of it, and part of it is what you were just saying, that people don't step out of their echo chambers, so you can't hear diverse thoughts because you're nowhere around diverse thoughts, and we all kind of go into our corners, and that's a huge burden, because it's very difficult for people to change if you aren't exposed to new ideas. It's difficult to be exposed to new ideas if all you do is hang around people who think the exact way that you think. And that's something that, it's very simplistic on one hand, and on the other hand, breaking that cycle is very difficult. And then
whose responsibility do you think it is?
It's the individual's responsibility to step out of that echo chamber, but it's kind of hard to do that, I think, if you don't even realize that that's what you're doing. And so it also takes participation from people who see it to say, hey, this is what's happening, and just please try to step out and entertain. And even if you're talking to people who think the same way you do, you have to say, hey, look at what the other people are saying, and at least understand, not agree, but understand what they're saying. You don't necessarily have to even understand where they're coming from, because I can't understand where people who carry tiki torches, I don't understand where they come from, nor do I want to, but I do want to hear what they're thinking so that I'm educated and I can at least, present an argument that's coherent, when I'm discussing those people. Now, I typically don't try to even engage, honestly, with those people because they're so far gone, and that's just frustrating to me. And so, hey, it's my bad, maybe,
Well,
but that's where I
that's a
am.
tough one, right? The
It's a
guys with
very
the
tough
tiki
one.
torches, they were marching
Like
and
how?
saying Jews will not replace us. So,
Yeah,
so you
exactly.
have to assume
Where?
that they
There's no
believe
argument there. There's
they
no
believe
argument
that
there
Jews
because
are
they're
coming to
wrong.
replace them.
They're
And
wrong, obviously, and
well, I
other people are
mean,
right. I mean, there's no
you can't go up
discussion
to them
there,
and say
honestly.
you're wrong, though. You say
Right.
Jews
If
are
you're
going
talking about, Jews are the devil, or you're, we're dominant and everyone else should be our slaves. That's just blatantly wrong. And I mean, all I can say to that is, you're an Arab, and it's wrong. I don't know how else to. I don't
to.
know. I don't know what to do with that. I guess that's what
Well,
I'm saying.
I read an article about how you change somebody's mind, and the premise of this article was if somebody says to you, Jews will not replace us, um, then you have to ask them the following question: um, When did you start to think or believe that Jews were trying to replace you?
Mm.
Right? You got to get to the root of the belief.
You deconstruct
Uh,
their thinking.
yeah,
Them to
right.
deconstruct their thinking.
When did you start to believe this? Did your father tell you this, or
Mm-hmm.
the guy you drink beer with in the bar? Did he tell you this? Or, who told you?
That's
And,
reasonable.
right, and then you can have a dialogue, and you can get into a conversation. But you're not confronting them, you're not challenging them, you're just saying, when did this start?
Think about this.
Hmm.
Oh, shoot. Okay. My mom calling.
Okay.
How old I get?
Coming,
phone
mother.
calls, I got to answer, but I'm going to have to get back
Anybody
to you
else
later.
have any
Sorry.
thoughts?
True control, right?
Anybody?
I'll talk. I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
How do we know? I always like a while ago, Ozzy, it was really interesting. You were talking about how America has all these movies where like we went and saved the day in World War II. And I know that it's a really big deal that Russia lost so many lives and sacrificed so much for that war and has never felt like it was recognized by the world. And I never thought, though, that Russia or Russians generally also thought that America didn't also win battles and save um, parts of it, whatever. I'm not disagreeing with you at all, and I'm not even saying that I'm right. And I think that's where I'm going with this. Like, how do we even know a few generations later? I mean, there's not many people around who were even alive then. It gets so hard to even know what's true. Ozzy and I are friends, and we have been, and I think we talk about our differences and our similarities and our have these deep talks all the time. But she and I both have these ingrained beliefs that are contradictory, sort of.
Don't
I
think.
and I think everybody knows what the Battle of the Bulge and D-Day, and everybody knows. Well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people recognize that Russia sacrificed so much. At the
Bless
biggest
you.
details are America saved the day and Russia saved the day. I don't know who saved the day, and how do we even know what's real? I guess is what I'm saying. Should it even matter? Do we just let it go and just start loving each other and trying to do it a different way?
Good question.
Yeah, well, part of the problem,
Difficult one.
right, is where you get your information. And if it's from Hollywood movies, it's going to favor the American viewpoint.
Yeah, if it's propaganda. Yeah, if it's TV in Russia, that is both like all the main channels are controlled by the government, so it's also like very, filtered information as well. So in all the books, always like the new government always tries to clear up some, facts as well. So like it's gonna be very difficult it's a difficult world, to be honest.
The mutability of history.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anybody else? Here's your chance, folks. You're letting it get by you. You have a thought?
I have another comment if nobody wants to speak.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mardo was one hand. His hand raised as well. My short comment was about the emotions and optimism. You see, because I have this, I almost can feel this change in mood while we speak. Because the more you think about how difficult the world it is, as it is, it gets more, depressing. This thought that is so difficult. There are so many different opinions. There are so many different. Life is so complex that it gets more difficult to stay happy, I guess. And I loved one of the slides where you had the information that there's no past, there's no future. And I think it's going to be so difficult to just stay in the present. But if you think about the meditations and all the practices that are called to somehow address our mental health, they do exactly that. Like they say, stay in the present, try to catch the moment that you have, like carpe diem and all that. So this is there's some certain dichotomy that I can see there too, because if you want to build the future, you need to remember about the past, but at the same time you need the optimism to actually take and build that future. But there's not much optimism when you think about how complicated things are, and it's so difficult to consider all the facts. Yeah, just that comment. Thanks.
Yep. And somebody had their hand up. Who was it?
Martellus War.
Yes.
But I think if you look at the history of the United States, we've always had to have a bad guy. I mean, from the very beginning of this country was founded, it was the British. Then I don't know. Practically every country in the world at one point or another, and it's been since. After World War II, probably it started before, but it took off that Russia has become, I don't want to say, enemy, I guess. I remember growing up saying that the Russians were going to bomb us, and we were going to, like during the Cuban Missile Crisis and that sort of thing. Yeah. So we've always had that.
When you were a kid, did you have to hide under your desk and do the role play? Yeah, me too.
Yep.
It was as real as it gets.
I was hoping by now, that we would at least set aside our differences with, Russia or whoever. I can't believe that, that every other country like Russia or China or, is as terrible. They have their own point of view. And
well, wait a minute. What about Iran? What's going on in Iran? Do you think?
Well, okay, I'm not going to agree. Okay, I'm fair enough. I'm not. Same thing with North Korea. Okay, I'm not going to cut them.
But it's not the people. If you met the people, I've been to China, and the Chinese people are wonderful. They really are wonderful people. And they're just like anybody. It's the government.
The power game.
Are they unhappy with our government, though? That's the question I'd like to know.
No, they're not. The people I dealt with, no. They all worked for the telephone company, and they were perfectly happy. And the telephone company in China, by the way, is capitalist. It's not communist. They're allowed to make money. So even in a totally communist, totalitarian state, have capitalism, which is, it's more doublethink, right? It's crazy.
All right.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Oh, no. Okay, we're done then. Thank you for coming. Hope to see you all again. I don't know what I'm going to talk about next time. Anybody has any ideas?
Yes, I have a
Contact me on
request.
Discord.
Yeah, I've been keeping it for a long time. At like emergence, your lecture on emergence was amazing. So if you can repeat that one anytime, I'll
Want
be
me to do
happy.
emergence again?
Yes.
Geez, that'll be the third time.
You can just send me slides or maybe any recordings if you have, so you don't have to do it again.
I'll tell you what, I'll post the emergence slides. And if you have any questions, they'll be on Discord, okay? So go to Discord. I'll put a link to the emergence slides and you can grab them.
Yay, thank you.
Okay. But like,
What have you been thinking about doing?
What have I been thinking about doing?
Yeah, what topics have you been considering, or have you been?
I actually started doing one on the Bill of Rights because something that doesn't get spoken about. Oh, well, they don't even teach social studies anymore. But the Bill of Rights, the purpose of the Bill of Rights was protect the people from the government. Right? That's what the Bill of Rights was for. When the Constitution was first written, there was no Bill of Rights. It was just, here's our plan. And the states, especially Virginia, had bills of rights because they were subjected to the colonial imperialism of England, doing things like deciding they would just move into your house, throw you out on the street, and put all their troops up in your home. So one of the bills of rights is you can't do that, and it was put there to protect people from government. So I thought it would be an interesting excursion to go through the Bill of Rights and just list them out and what they're for. Because again, this is something people don't know. When's the last time you sat down and read the Constitution? Yeah. But I
really interesting.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bill of Rights is really interesting because I haven't whenever I was a kid, so I grew up. I went to elementary school in the early '80s, so I still had social studies, and I still learned about the Bill of Rights and all of that, and I just don't remember it.
Right.
I know that's ridiculous, but I mean,
that's the 70% that went by you.
Yeah, I mean, I know we have the right, there's freedom of speech and there's blah blah blah, all of those that people bring up. But
how many bills of rights are there? How many rights are listed? Anybody tell me?
12. I don't know.
That's how ignorant we are.
Yeah, 21.
No, the 20. There's at least 25. I think there's 27. I'm not sure. I didn't get that far. Okay. There were only 10 at the beginning, but there have been many added over time.
Yeah.
The 14th Amendment, for example, is the one that gives you privacy. And that's the one on which Roe versus Wade was decided. That's the one that was recently overturned. So knowing the 14th Amendment suddenly becomes really germane. Does it guarantee you the ability to marry somebody of your own gender, for example? Right? Because is that really a privacy issue or not? Well, according to the Supreme Court, it used to be, but it isn't anymore. So I don't know. You want me to come back and do that through the Bill of Rights?
Well, if you had other things you were thinking about, then we could do something else. If you weren't if it wasn't fun for you, or if you weren't getting what you wanted out of it,
the reason I nixed it is it's history, and history is dry. Even the best history is kind of dry. And the Bill of Rights, that's just going through a list and saying, here's number 2 on the list, and this is what it means. Here's number 3 on the list. So that's why I nixed it. It's hard to get that going. Yeah. Also, I have an international audience, and they really want to hear the American Bill of Rights. Maybe not. I don't want to turn people away.
Rights? I don't know what rights are. Just kidding.
What?
Rights? I don't know what rights are. These are just left, right. That's it. Just joking. Just joking. Yeah.
I get you.
The AI talk was pretty cool and evolutionary.
Thinking about it, and again, if anybody has any ideas about what they'd like to hear next month, let me know. on the Discord. If you want a copy of my slides, let me know on the Discord. I don't know if you noticed, but in my slides, it's not up there. In my slides, I often have footnotes on where I got what I presented. So if you want to pursue any of that, like you saw a chart, you want to get a copy of the chart, you want to read the article the chart was embedded in, let me know and I'll post it on Discord.
Emergence,
Okay.
certainly.
Thanks again for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having this lecture.
Thank
Sure.
you.
I do have the recording if anybody wants to rewatch or re-listen to something, and I screenshotted some of the slides too to keep the
Oh, you
information.
recorded this?
Yeah, I normally record for myself, but if you want, I can upload it to YouTube or anywhere else. And if you have
Great. I didn't know anybody was recording this, but thank you for doing that. And yeah,
teachers, teachers' habits.
If you post a link on the Discord, then anybody who wants to see it can go
Oh,
see
cool.
it. That'd be great.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm gonna upload it
that would
and
be
share.
awesome. Missed
Where's
the
the
first
Discord
half.
link,
Thanks,
though?
Ozzy.
Yay. My pleasure.
Discord, if you click
Discord
on that
link.
over there, see it says click here to subscribe. If you click on that, you will get a web page and there's a button in there that says join Discord.